Alright, hi everyone. My name is Johanna Weiman, and this week I'm going to be presenting my final assignment for my business associations class. This assignment is to cover topics about a specific letter of intent that we were provided with. I'm going to start off with the plain language translation, which is the first step of the assignment, but first I'm going to reference back to a page in our book. For purposes of everyone seeing it, I'm going to show you it on the e-reader, but it is page 565 in the textbook. And it states that paralegals may be asked to assist with drafting the letter of intent, establishing the parameters of the agreement between the parties, using examples from form books and transactions previously done in the office. So I thought that would help everybody out on what a letter of intent may entail. So starting at the top of this letter of intent, I have enlarged it for people to see, but you should have a copy right in front of you, but I have enlarged it, zoomed it in a little bit for accessibility. Starting at the top, the intro states that the letter entails an agreement and a listing of terms the parties must adhere to, and it also states that the two parties are bound to the terms stated in the letter of intent. So number one states right here, the purchased assets. When the deal closes, the party purchasing the business will assume/take on all property owned by the business. The letter details all the specifics. So these specifics include inventories, intellectual property, etc. Number two details that all of the liabilities assumed by the previous owner will transfer to the buyer as soon as the closing date comes. Number three, purchase price. This part shows the price of the business that must be paid in cash on the closing date, and the buyer, the seller will fill that information in. Number four deals with pre-closing covenants. This section contains covenants, which is just another fancy word for agreements. This part details that both parties will meet a certain commitment standard and obtain all approval needed plus the necessary forms needed to run the business, which everyone should be familiar with since we've discussed a lot of forms this semester. It also states that the business will continue to be run like it has in the past. Lastly, it says that the parties will agree to draft a purchase agreement that contains all the parts of this letter of intent. It also must contain representations and warranties, which basically means the underlying matters/facts that are represented in this letter of intent. Number five is conditions to obligation. This part states that the agreement will be completed unless the purchaser doesn't follow through with the approvals and forms that were required by the letter of intent. Number six is due diligence. Due diligence has to do with the reasonable steps a person takes in order to satisfy a legal requirement. So number six states that the seller must cooperate with steps the buyer takes to investigate the business, as well as provide access to any key materials needed to run the business, such as the books, records, anything like that. Number seven is the confidentiality, non-competition. The info acquired by the due diligence investigation will be kept confidential until the transaction is complete and will only be shared with those who need it to complete the transaction. The purchaser is responsible if any of the info is shared, leaked, etc. If the transaction isn't completed, the info must be returned or destroyed, and this must be shown in writing. Information must not be used in any possible competition between any future buyer, seller, anything like that. Number eight has to do with employees of the business. This part says that employees can't be recruited or hired until the business transaction is complete. Number nine has to do with exclusive dealing. The seller can't enter into any other deals until the transaction is complete. So that means that if it can't be completed, the buyer must pay the seller a fee that equals 1% of the purchase price to make up for any expenses incurred due to the negotiation. Number 10 is the public announcement. This part basically says if the negotiation is made public in any way, both parties must agree/prepare the public announcement together. So all this stuff must be dealt with jointly. Number 11 has to do with expenses. Both parties will pay any and all expenses incurred due to negotiation. You can refer back to number 9, where the breakup fee, etc. Number 12 has to do with indemnification. This means they compensate for damage or loss sustained, expense incurred, etc. It also includes protection against future damage or liability. It basically states that all liability falls on the seller during the acquisition of the business and that the buyer shouldn't really incur any of that. As for proofreading, I don't see any specific spelling errors. And numbers 1 and 2 and 9, some of the spacing is a little off. It also is off and choppy in number 7 right here. The only thing I would change is the closing where it says "very truly yours" right here. I'm not really fond of that. I don't think it's very professional. That's how they chose to end it. But if it were me preparing the document as a paralegal, I probably would go with something like "sincerely" or "best regards" or "cordially," something like that. Not "very truly yours." Formatting wise, I think that the only changes needed would be the spacing of the lines. So it's not formatted so weird that it's not, no one presses enter when they don't need to press enter. So the purchaser, this is capitalized when it doesn't need to be capitalized, and it doesn't even need to be indented or spaced to the next line. So I think that would be the only thing. So I would fix that. For pros and cons and how the parties are faring for the buyer, the pros are that no personal liability is really incurred during the acquisition, but the cons would be having to possibly pay a breakup fee if negotiation falls through. I think that having to pay 1% of the purchase price might not seem like that much, but having to pay any kind of fee along with the other fees isn't really something that you want to have to deal with. For the seller, I feel like the pros maybe is that they're really in control when it comes to handling the business. When handing it over, they're more like they have the managerial authority. They have most of they call the shots in this situation, it feels like. A con, I would think, would be to have to assume the most of the liability during the acquisition and not have it fall on the buyer. Ultimately, I think that the buyer is protected if anything falls through. They get paid, which is a good thing, and they have more control in the negotiation. I feel that this letter of intent is a good one. I think it's a good representation of what should exist between two parties in a buy and sell negotiation. Like I said, the only thing I would change would be the ending and probably just having someone check and see if the spacing can be changed. I just think it's formatted a little odd. Well, that is it for this assignment, and then I hope that everyone has a great rest of their day.